Yeah, I just want to welcome everybody here. My name is Steve Schultes, and I'm class of 78. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time out today to have this, hopefully what will be a real nice walk down memory lane. This is our first of what we've called the Legends of Penn Track and Field. Dave is the first we're doing, but we hope to have many more. Some of the alumni gave us some grief about, hey, you've got Craig Masback, you've got Ronaldo Nehemiah. How about some of our athletes? And so that was great feedback. And you'll see that, we did the interview. This is a follow-up to it. And hopefully, this is a great idea that we can keep building on. And I'm the guy that, had the privilege and the benefit.
I'm Houston.
Try to mute if you're on mute. We can hear you. I had the privilege and benefit of doing Dave Merrick, and it was a great experience. And before we actually introduce Dave and have our discussion with Dave and walk down memory lane, I did want to do a few thanks right off the bat. The first is a guy that did more work than anybody on putting this together. He's also the class of 76. He likes to be called the Zoom czar, but the guy that puts all the pictures together, all those tapes from Craig Virgin and others had to be diced and spliced. And Kent Staver has done a good job to pull this together. So a special thanks to Kent and two other guys that are part of this 70s crowd in my group, which is Dave McKee, who is the father of helping us get together. And that's what these Zoom videos are really all about. He's our liaison back to Penn. He's been the heartbeat of trying to get our alumni back together, which is terrific. And also a sprinter and a great football player who, God forbid, he's putting up with these 3 distance runners. Ron Wilson has been instrumental in helping put this together. A lot of behind the scenes work. He's been terrific working with Ron. So I want to make a special thanks to those guys. And obviously the 3 people that came in that interview, Craig Virgin, Dave Walters, and Coach Al, they spent a lot of time with us. And I really a big thank you to those guys as well. So with that as a ado, I want to introduce the star of our show today, Mr. David Merrick. We went through all the litany of things he did, but I just want to say, in my opinion, David is still today one of the greatest high school runners of all time. He's the greatest distance runner at Penn, and in my opinion, my humble opinion, he's the greatest runner we've ever had in the Ivy League as well. So David, welcome again, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Steve. Again, just to reiterate what you said, special thanks to you and to Kent for putting all this together and putting up with it. So,
well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
You may get some grief today, so you may not thank me at the end. Dave, just so you know, and everybody in the audience knows, we've probably got, all told, we're probably going to end up with about 70 people. We interviewed folks from the 1970s era. So anybody on the track and field team that might have intersected with you, Dave, either ran with you or knew of you, we invited that group. We also invited Coach Dolan, who's on the call. And I'm told we may have 20 current athletes. So Dave, you've got to be on good behavior today. Watch what you say. We've also got 4 of our current managers. We've got guys from many of your teams. So it's a great representation of the track and field team from a great era, Dave, in the 70s. So that's who's here. And then for everybody, the agenda that we're going to go through today is this. Dave and I have one topic that Dave wants to embellish a bit that we didn't get to chat in the interview. There's 100 things to talk about. We have 13 alumni that have agreed to ask the question of Dave today. And the way it's going to work is those alumni will do a real quick question to Dave, hopefully just a minute or two. Dave will respond. And then everybody will have a chance to open up their mic, unmute, and chip in on that particular topic. I'd only ask that if we're talking about Eamon Coughlin, for example, stick to that particular piece. Don't run after another piece because some of the alumni might be going in on that. So it's going to be first pigs to the trough, unmute. If you've got a comment on a particular topic, that's great. We want to welcome all the alumni to chat here. And Dave, after we go through all of the alumni, we're hoping that if we go through those in about 5 minutes each, we've got about 20, 30 minutes for anybody on the line to be able to chat and ask you questions. So that's the game plan today, my friend.
Great.
Now, Dave, I know there's one topic that you
cut everybody off. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I know. 50, 70 is a lot to talk. Well, Dave, I know there's one topic, maybe more, that you wanted to chat about. One was the Penn family. I know people could leave that interview thinking, boy, Dave left Penn, he went to Alabama. My gosh, did he, what's his feelings about Penn? I know you feel very strongly about the Penn family and maybe a couple other points with that too, but maybe you could chat a little bit more about any thoughts coming off that interview and specifically on the Penn family?
Well, in our interaction back and forth, Steve, I kind of surfaced, and I'm not sure I dwelled on it enough because it's, why'd you come back? It's kind of why I went to Penn. All of you are part of the track family, and you know what I'm talking about. It's, the Penn track team was really family. So looking at one leaving for different reasons and what have you, for health things and from that perspective, but looking to come back, it was an easy decision to come back because when I got back to Penn, it was like being part of a family. The guys were great. I knew them. It was an easy transition back into it. And my dad was right. When I looked at Villanova, from an athletic standpoint, it was a great institution to go to. When my dad sat there and said, you're not going to be able to run for all your life. You might want to pick a school where you're going to have assets from that education to utilize the rest of your life. And he was a pretty smart guy. So, and then I looked back and kind of looked through some of the things we talked about, Steve, and there are some real critical people, Carl Thornton and Julio Piazza. Without them my freshman year, I don't know that I make it through the whole year. I live with them for a while just to get through, and they know what I put up with, or actually they put up with me. So I've got a special thanks to those guys from the early time on, and then the rest of the Penn track team to come back to. So just a special thanks.
Right. We feel the same way, Dave. We're glad you made the decision. And I know for me, it was an honor and a privilege to have you kick my butt in all those workouts through the year. So thank you. Well, let me, there's one, we got one of our alumni that has a question, Dave, that I think kind of speaks to this particular topic. So we're going to let Paul Zarwin go first. Paul wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about why in the world you chose the University of Pennsylvania. So, Ken, if we can have Paul, if you're unmute,
I'm
welcome.
on. Can you hear me?
Welcome, my friend. Huh?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hey, it's great to see you, Dave. So I remember when you were a senior in high school, Track and Field News said you were the greatest high school distance runner since Steve Prefontaine. So, and I think that was accurate. Okay. And I would have expected you to go to Oregon, or, well, you just mentioned Villanova, okay, because you were at that level. Not to knock Penn at all, but could you go into that decision a little more?
Penn wasn't on my radar at all. And as I told, we were, Steve, Kent and I were chatting ahead of time. Tup would send me all the application stuff and everything else. And I kept on telling him, Tup, I'm not getting it. Send it again. I'll keep a lookout for it. And he said, no, it's the envelope with the Ivy Leagues in the top. And I'm going, what do you mean the Ivy Leagues? Yeah, it's got Penn, Princeton, Yale. I'm going, oh, send that again. And I'll because I had gotten them. I'd seen the Ivy Leagues at the top. I was tossing them out. I didn't know it was in the Ivy League. It's interesting. It was a long process because I had Penn on my back burner, looking at it mainly because of Tup's persistence. He just kept on throwing things out there. And it was interesting because I had a number of people ask the same question, Paul, why'd you pick Penn? And I think Penn was a real unsung athletic, prowess at the time in the early 70s. You had Carl, you had Julio, you had Elton, you had this plethora of really, really good people. And so as I was looking at different teams, Villanova was stacked. They were national champions the year before. So it was a difficult decision. One, it was an easy decision to initially sign with them. And then as I thought more and more about it, the education played a bigger factor. And there were great athletes at Penn. So coming to Penn was an easy decision for me, kind of confusing for other folks. But we finished third in the nation, my freshman year. We were a damn good team. So it was an easy, people look, why'd you do it? There's why. We finished third. So
that's great. I just want to, before I leave, let me just say one thought. Tup used to say that that team that finished third, I think you were beaten by Oregon and Washington, right?
Yes.
So Tup used to say that it hadn't been for Lewis and Clark, Penn would have won the national championship.
True. Very true. So
anyway, it was great to have you at Penn, and I still marvel at some of the races you ran. So it was beautiful to see in person.
That was fun, but that's when tracks were downhill, Paul.
Now, some alumni want to there's a lot of alumni, Dave, that told me they had the key hand in getting you to Penn. So I don't know if anybody else has a comment on either why Dave went or they helped him get to Penn. You're welcome to chime in on this. They're all shy, Dave, or they're on. You got to unmute if you're
Well,
trying to chat.
one guy later on through it was my twin was Dennis Lunny. And he kept me there later on. I mean, it didn't keep me there, but I related a lot with him because he was the only other Midwesterner. So all you Easterners were a little bit odd to us. So
he's in the blocks, Dave, with a question soon. So you'll hear from Mr. Dennis. All right, great. Well, we're glad you came. We're glad you came to Penn, and Paul, thanks a bunch. I think, Dave, we've got all 4 members of the 4x1500 American record team on the call. And one of them, Mr. Tom Murray, who I think has always told me he was the key catalyst for that group. I'm just kidding, Tom. He had a question as well for you. Thomas, all yours, buddy.
I had to carry this guy all the time he was there, for God's sakes. So I thought I'd start my question with first, a quick apology. First of all, Dave, it is amazing to see you, for God's sakes. We have not seen each other. I didn't realize the picture of my bar was going to be so present.
Nice to see your priorities stay the same.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Well, I'm on vacation in Sag Harbor, so I travel with that stuff.
Actually, this is a hologram.
Yeah.
It make me look good.
But I wanted to start with a quick apology, and then a couple of very quick stories that will lead into the question of what we all know Dave to be, this kind of humble, unassuming guy who had this incredible competitive fire. But I think the apology comes from I have to apologize for Huntley and me lobbying TUP for you to be the anchor man on all those relays against Eamon Coughlin. So it must have worked. So sorry, maybe you didn't know. I'm kidding, but short of Phil Burbayi wanted to be an investment banker at Wharton, I think pretty much whoever was there was probably in trouble. So unfortunately, it was you. But thank you for drawing the short straw for those races.
I kept on asking Tup, can't we shuffle around a little bit? Tommy and Dollar are good milers. Let's move it around a little bit. But no.
You didn't know what was going on. But a couple of two very quick examples and they're actually being non-track examples. And the first one was somehow we got into a pull-up contest in the locker room. And I prided myself on going to the weight room. And I have to tell you, I never ran into Dave there, but I prided myself on doing that. And I figured, this is my shot. I got him on this one because I work out here. I don't know how many I did, but you did 10 more without even sweating, without even trying, in typical Dave Merrick fashion. So there was just no beating you in anything, down to and including, I think Merrick, not Merrick, but McKee and Huntley might have been there. We in the quad, I think we all stayed for spring break one year, and we had ended up drinking beer one night in the quad and having this ridiculous Cheetos eating contest. Somebody had this big bag of oversized, who could eat the most Cheetos without drinking a beer? Nobody could eat more than 3 of them. And you ate like 6 of them before you even cracked your beer open. So it just goes to show it really didn't matter what you were competing against with you were going to end up losing. And I will say, you could have let me win the Cheeto contest.
No pain, no gain,
It's not like
back in the armor and they sneak right in.
Oh, I think he froze.
Oh, you can't cut Tommy off because we're going to talk about the 1976 NCAA indoor championship.
No, he froze. I don't know
I'll
what.
tell you a little bit, but I'm going to say.
Well, he froze in the championships too. So
There you go. But anyway, so those are my, 2 little inane examples of your competitiveness. But I guess the question is, did you know you had this kind of special competitive element beyond the rest of us mere mortals? And how did you do that? Did you get it? Where the hell did you get that from? What's your take on all that? And I'll turn the floor back over to the esteemed Mr. Merrick to answer that. I yield my time.
It's interesting, Tommy, because I'm asked that a lot, and I didn't think I was different from anybody else except for my high school coach. Actually, my grade school coach pointed it out that I hated to lose anything, tennis, some Cheeto eating, something else, what have you. It was just an attitudinal thing from the get-go. Coach Al and Coach, actually, I've got a Coach Rodriguez story with Carl Thornton out at the 71 AAU Outdoor Championships. Carl was talking to my coach, Coach Joe, and at the time, and he said, it's going to be a tough transition for Dave at the college level. And, Coach Rod looks at Carl, and I remember him saying, no, I don't think it's probably not as hard as you think. Dave doesn't like to lose. If anybody's going to transition, he'll transition to it. So, but I've always had it. It's not something I thank God I was blessed with it. It's a curse or a sin, but at the same time, I appreciate it. So.
Well, it was interesting to see for, I guess, a couple of years that we over 1 or 2 years, I forget, to be honest with you, but it was good to, as Paul said, it was good to witness it firsthand. So, and great to see you and everybody on this call, man. I love you all, and it's great to see all those familiar names. So I'll turn it back to Kent or Steve.
Good to see you, Tommy.
Thanks,
Good to
Tommy.
see you too,
to
man.
check with you, man. Thanks, Tommy.
Your hairline better than mine. Yeah, wait a minute. You're making
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's
we're
not the
cool
junior
now.
prom here.
We're in
Dave.
style.
So David, you already mentioned this, man, so I don't know if he needs an introduction. I know he's a good buddy of yours, but Dennis Lunny is next on deck, and Dennis had kind of a similar vein question from Tommy. So Dennis, the floor is yours.
It's kind of interesting. I was not at Penn. I was kind of in the same situation as Dave. Being from the Midwest and coming to Penn, I'll call it the concrete jungle. It was a huge transition for me. And basically, I went and left and went to Denison, which is a small school in the middle of Ohio, just because I thought, oh my God, this college thing is not for me. I need someplace a little closer to home. Kind of, and I know you guys are mostly from the East, but it's hard to explain. Westerners kind of understand each other a little better. So the question I have for Dave, though, since I wasn't there at Penn when he arrived, was what were your goals when you came to Penn? I mean, were you setting up to say, okay, let's win the national championship because you obviously had excellent teammates? Or was this, what was your individual goal? I mean, individual champion in the NCAA, and then what was your eventual goal when you left school in terms of, especially track?
An interesting one, and goals in terms of coming to Penn. And I alluded to it earlier where, Villanova, where I initially signed, were previous national champions. So I looked at them in terms of, I was going to, hop on a team that was going to make an impact. Tuck did a great job of selling, the Penn team, just the abilities of Carl, Julio, Elton. Well, then when I got here, it went 10 deep of just quality people from a running standpoint. And Tuck and I, chatted about it because I asked him in terms of where do you think, Penn will be in terms of the Ivies, the IC4As. I had no idea what the IC4As were, and the nationals. I said, "What's your, what is your goal in terms of what you think we can accomplish?" And he asked me, turned it around. I said, "Where do you think we can finish?" And I said, "Well, I want to finish in the top 5." And so it's kind of an interesting one. So.
What about after Penn? Did you have any running ambitions after Penn?
That's the fork in the road at the end. That was a difficult, in 76, it was a kind of a difficult decision. Davey McKee will understand this. After Penn, it was one using a Wharton degree, or I would have loved to have been a coach like Tommy Donnelly. But as I said, I came to kind of a fork in the road with injuries and something else. I just had to walk away from running and kind of close the chapter on it and go into a different phase of life. Mainly because I would keep on going back to it. My knees were shot. I don't know why I keep on coming back to Philadelphia. It was a concrete city and just beat the crap out of me. I'd go home to Illinois, recover, and come back and make one season and then break down again. So the scenario is just repeating itself over and over. But I'm a mean elliptical guy now, I tell you. I stay at Dennis's house when I drive home. He's down there at 4:30 in the morning riding his bike on his elliptical and everything else. And so I go down and have coffee and watch him. I feel good about it. So.
Can I add something to you two guys? Hi, Dennis. Good seeing you.
Hey,
Dave, had you ever seen the ocean before Dennis, or did he introduce you to the Atlantic Ocean? Or
I have the greatest stories of Dennis. I'm not sure if it was after he had graduated or if we would do it during school. Dennis would we'd drive down to the beach on Sunday, and was it Island Beach State Park then?
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and he'd go down and he'd read the New York Times from cover to cover, but he'd sit there. He had an umbrella on. He had long sleeve white shirt. But then why do we go to the beach if you kind of cover up the whole time? Well, I just like reading the Times, and the view's good. That was my exposure to the ocean. So.
Actually, my ex-wife introduced Dave to the ocean because she used to go out, like we'd get there like almost at sunrise, for God's sake.
We'd leave at 5 o'clock, 5:30.
And she would be out in the sun all day long. Me, I could take 15 minutes of sun. I'd have to sit in the car. It was crazy.
Oh.
So, and Dave, Dave McKee he knew my ex-wife. So yeah.
yeah, you had me over for dinner a lot. Germantown friends.
Yeah. So it was a crazy kind of thing, but yeah. I
Well,
think
Dennis, thank you,
We didn't
man.
go to the beach. We hid behind the dunes where the wind couldn't get you. So I'm going, well, why did we go to the beach? But it was fun.
That's great.
that was
Well,
good.
Dennis, thank you, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dave, we talked a lot about the greatest cross-country team ever, and most of those guys are here with us today. And I think Jim Raftery is going to kind of bring up some old memories with that. So, Jim, if I think you're on, I hope there he is.
Fine. Thanks, Steve.
Jim, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to say it's great seeing many of my old friends actually see physically with the Zoom after so many years. It's great. I hope everybody's doing well. But Dave, I'd like to bring you back 50 years. Okay, so it's 1971.
It is 50, you're right.
I'm starting my sophomore year at Penn. Penn athletics are on a roll. The basketball team had just finished 28-1 in the spring, getting national ranking for an Ivy League school. Tubb had moved from Villanova, the running power, to Penn in 1966 and was quickly transforming the Quakers to being competitive, number one, but even greater. And Penn's cross-country team the prior year had finished second to Harvard. But there was a lot of optimism. All the runners were coming back for the following year. So 71, when you're the high school phenom, and it surprised me when you decided on Penn and joined us at Lake Willoughby up in Vermont for a week of cross-country boot camp.
Right.
It was August 50 years ago. And I was in awe. I sensed a special season was going to begin, and it did. We ran the Ivy tables, and then there were the battles with Villanova, the IC4A and Belmont.
Big Five.
But the ultimate test came in November 22nd, at Knoxville, Tennessee, for the NCAA championships. Now, I was there as Penn's eighth man, as the sub. And I watched the race. It was freezing. It was 30 degrees or so. But you, Bob Childs, Julia Elton, and Carl took Penn home as the scorers. In third place behind Steve Prefontaine and the University of Oregon. And second was Washington State, but Penn finished third. And Villanova finished fourth. That to me was the greatest Penn cross-country achievement I witnessed, but maybe the greatest Penn cross-country achievement ever. And it put us on the map, national map, and you being the catalyst. It was an awesome trip, and it was really great. And also, in my opinion, it vindicated Tubb to Jumbo Elliott and his Villanova colleagues.
Yeah.
So that's the reflection. Any comments you have, I'd appreciate. But
No, I do remember going up to camp. And it kind of started, it's a huge transition from high school to, to college running was, from 80, 85, some long ones, 90 miles. We were doing over 100 miles, 120 a week. But, Jim, as you pointed out, Penn was 10 people deep. You were a phenomenal runner and you were eighth man. And you were all Ivy the year before. So it's amazing how, how deep that, that particular team was. You look at Krieger and all these guys that didn't make the team that were actually really, really good runners. I was going back and kind of reminiscing in terms of, the top 7 and the top 10, but there were guys that didn't make it that were just, phenomenal folks.
Yeah, Jim, there's a lot of other guys on that team on the call. I don't know if some would want to comment about, did they welcome Dave with loving hands? Did they help him? Did he help? I'd love to hear some of those early experiences for some of the other guys.
I do have a story about camp.
We don't know what camp means, Dave.
Well, before we go up to camp, what have you, Coach Rodriguez and Coach Al, we sit down and talk about transitioning to college running and what it's going to take, and then the struggles that it's almost twice the distance of high school. Tough. Not tough. Rod reflects on something Carl had told him out at the AEUs and said, it's going to be a tough transition for Dave going into college. And that's where he says, Dave doesn't like to lose, so I don't think it's going to be that tough. So Rod pulls me aside and he says, you're going to camp. You want to take a run, and you want to show them that you have a different gear. And I remember going through the schedule, and it was a Sunday or something else where it was a 16 or an 18-mile run where it was an out and back. So I was wondering, this is the day I'm going to pick it and then put the hammer down and just go and see who wants to go with it. We go out, turn around, and I had started picking the pace up going out, and turning around and coming back. I think it was 8 miles, 9 miles all the way back in. I had the hammer down going all the way back. So I get back and Tup says, oh, great. Okay. Everybody else will be coming. About 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, everybody else starts coming in. Tup looks over and goes, what the hell was that? And I said, hey, welcome to college.
Anybody else from that 71 team want to comment on Mr. Merrick joining the team?
Yes, I do.
They'll keep me honest. So yeah.
Mike, yell. Julio,
hi, Dave.
Hey, Julio.
I appreciate the kind words, but your reputation preceded you, and we were excited to have you on the team. And once we saw when you put the hammer down that you were for real. It wasn't just times on a newspaper or something like that. But we knew you were the real deal. But up at camp, Tuppy would give us a little bit of a free rein. And remember, you got stitches in your foot from running in the water, and this was, after that 16, 18-mile run that you did. And here I'm thinking, Jesus, our season's over before it started, because, we knew what you had. And I always appreciated how calm Tup was. He took it with a grain of salt. He still let us go into the water, but you had cut your foot and got stitches, for, running around, in the surf, at Lake Willoughby. So I just want to know if you remember that.
Oh, I do. It was funny because I was arguing with Carl because we were playing touch football, and I'm going, I grew up in the Midwest and we had similar lakes. I'm going, there's a lot of clamshells in here. I cut yourself. So, well, if you guys are doing it, I'm doing it. I'm going to be part of the team. So I'm playing, what have you, and step. I remember stepping on it and I hop up and I'm going, I got 14 stitches on my foot. But that's take it with stride.
Julio, thanks, man. Thank you, guys. This the greatest cross-country team ever at Penn, dominant team. Dave, a lot of us didn't know where you were a lot of times, and I think Jeff Wachowski has some stories about what you did in rehab. I'm not sure what they are, but
Jeff, my weight training buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is sort of Tom Murray took a little bit of my thunder, but this is a non-track story. Yeah, during the junior year, I also had an injury, and Dave and I had some overlap with that and decided to use other methods to keep in shape. And so we started swimming, and Ken Poskett helped us with some freestyle strokes, and we got to swimming a mile in the pool. But Dave and I also had an interest in lifting weights. So we went to the weight room, and there all the field guys were lifting tremendous amounts of weight. Irv Munshine would get under a bench press and bench press 275, 300 pounds. And so we knew that was the hallmark of upper body strength. And at the time, not many long distance runners lifted weights. And in fact, I remember some of the calisthenics before training. Some of my teammates had trouble doing the push-ups before the training. Tup had us do push-ups and sit-ups and leg crossovers, and that was a challenge for some. But anyway, Dave and I decided, well, let's see what we can do on the bench press. So we went on the bench press, and the Olympic bar is 45 pounds, and the two largest discs are 45 pounds. So we started out putting 45 pounds on each side, and that's 135 pounds. And one of the hallmarks of bench pressing is, can you bench press your body weight? So that was easy. But in Dave's, as he quoted in the last segment last month, his training with a purpose came into full vogue at that point, because he rapidly started adding more weights and more weights. And Dave got to the milestone. I don't know, Dave, I apologize. I don't know if you got high to this, but Dave got to the point where he could put two 45-pound discs on either side of a 45-pound bar and bench press repetitively 225 pounds.
Wow.
And, you know, that was amazing. I never quite made that, but Dave could do it multiple times. And again, Dave, I don't know if you went higher than that, but boy, that was astounding. And it just kind of reiterates everything that everybody else said about his determination, his strength, his innate talents, and then his vigor to just do great in just anything he put his mind to. And that's why he could come back, you know, from the multiple rehabs, because he worked just as hard in rehab and pushed himself just as hard in rehab as he did out on the cross country or the track. So thank you for letting me share that story. Appreciate it, guys.
Moon had a part of that, Jeff, and thank you, because we go over with the weight guys, and we put 225 on, and Moon looks and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And you told him, said, "No, he can do it. As a matter of fact, he'll do it twice." So,
Yeah. Did you do weights in high school, Dave?
no, I take that back. Yes, we did. It was Ronnie Rep. It wasn't Bobby Bulk. It was 45 pounds, 15, 25 times or something. So
we're learning a lot today.
I don't feel so bad about that pull-up contest now.
Right.
Sounds like a setup.
I was going to say the cat's out of the bag for Murph.
All right.
No, I've never done chest before, Tommy.
And no steroids, right, Dave?
Well, no, not too many.
Jeff, thank you, man.
Yeah,
Good
thanks.
to see you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Hey, Doc.
Dave, when Dave was setting this thing up for the interview, he said, "Hey, there's a few people you might want to chat with," and two of them, his coach and then a teammate. And he said, "Oh, by the way, Craig Virgin," which, was kind of like, "Oh, thanks. I got to go find Craig Virgin." I ended up speaking, I think 3 or 4 hours with the guy. I actually changed my attitude about Mr. Virgin. He was a great guy and had a lot of great things to say in the commentary. But I know Bruce Fiore's been asking me 80 times to Sunday, "What about Craig? What about Craig?" So Bruce, ask your questions about Mr. Craig Virgin that we had a chance to watch and learn a little bit more about with Mr. Merrick.
Good to see you, Dave.
Hey, good to see you, Bruce.
Yeah, I thought it was really neat to have one of your top competitors say some words about you and, share your influence on him. And I guess my question for you is, how close were you with him back in your high school years, your college years, and maybe even thereafter? And did you ever train with him, or was it all the competitive races?
Just competitive races, and luckily we were far enough apart. I was a senior when he was a sophomore, so while he was in my state meets, he ran really well. In cross country, I think he finished 5th or 6th, but as a sophomore. So I was kind of glad that it wasn't around when he was a little older. And then I kept in touch with him mainly because my good friend Dave Walters was roommates with Craig at the University of Illinois. So I kind of kept track of him, through that. And I'd chitty chat with him every once in a while. Because Craig likes to talk. Sorry, Craig, if you're on. So it's
And what's the big vegetable in the garden this year?
everything. I've got zucchini, squash, I've got eggplant. I'm making ratatouille at home, so I got to get off like 4:15 to turn it off. So,
Hey, Dave, Craig made a big deal about, I had to send him the bio.
Oh.
We lost him.
He's probably going to show us some of his vegetables.
Yeah, it's ratatouille time.
hold on, Bruce. Wait a minute. I pawn him off.
All right.
Residence.
I'm going to send you my address. You can ship them over.
See, it's probably the biggest friggin' tomato in Pennsylvania too. We can't grow a normal sized potato. It's got
Hey,
the tomato.
I gotta beat the guy. I gotta beat the guy in the next row, you know?
That's what I.
It's all
The
about
young
those-
guys on the team, this is what the older people do after their running career. They
You do.
Hey, Dave, in Craig version, when I sent him your bio, we did a rough bio before he talked to us. We had down 17 times he broke the 9-minute mile, which is outrageous. And Craig made a big deal. It was 18. I did it in my book and he really got upset with that. And then you told me something about the 18 number. This is an astounding statistic, but could you just tell folks about how many times in high school you broke 9 minutes in the 2 mile?
18 is in high school competitions, what have you. And then we ran indoors, University of Chicago every year. And so I had 4 or 5 meets that weren't, trackable because they were AAU meets and something else that, weren't published and what have you. So I was keeping my own log. I had about 23 or 24 times. And then in high school, as you can imagine, you were on the hit list every time you ran. Somebody wanted to beat you. So it's, Coach Rod and Coach Al really kind of strategized of running 8:55 every 2 mile. Just put the hammer down, and if somebody's going to beat you, they're going to have to beat you. So,
unbelievable. I think all of us had a better appreciation for Mr. Virgin. I mean, Dave was going through a family situation, didn't have any time, but he put in a lot of time for this, and he said, "There's only 2 people I would have done this for, and you were one of them." So,
he's a
I
good
gave
guy.
him a lot of respect on that. It was great. Bruce, thank you, man.
I didn't join you, Bruce.
You got it.
Be good, Bruce. Dave, there's this 2-month window in your senior year that might be one of the greatest feats in Penn athletics as an individual. And I know Peter Rogers wants to bring us back to that fall of, I think it's 75. Peter.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Hey, Dave, it's great to see you, plus
Hey,
all the
Pete,
other
good to see you.
guys. As I say, really, I just first heard of Dave. I think I was sitting in a study hall in 9th grade reading about you after your 71 high school year. And I knew that Dennis was at Penn, so it really got me thinking, maybe I'll go to Penn someday. And I think ultimately my choices came down to Penn, West Point, and North Carolina. And the fact that I could run with these guys, or at least be on the team, I would say run with them, really was something. You talk about the quality education people. That was my expectation, was fulfilled. So thank you. Dave, my question to you is just comment. It's really that fall of 75. I was a junior trying to make team 1. It was so deep, so I ran B most of the time, so I got to see you run. Talk about that races. I just remember the race at Princeton when you beat Frank Shorter's record. Then the race at Fairmont Park when you broke, I think, Donald Walsh's record by 10 seconds. And then I think the IC4A where you're the first one to go under 23 minutes, I think, to break John Hartnett's record from Villanova. Talk about that magical period, fall of 75.
You kind of hit the nail on the head, Pete. It was kind of a magical time where it was kind of reminiscent of high school, where I, put a lot of training in and really controlled my races. I pretty much knew what I could go out 4:35, 4:40, and I knew where I was going to be. I wasn't going to burn out or something else. Knew how I could, how long I could sustain it. The most frustrating one was probably the NCAs. It was myself, Craig, and I think Nick Rose from Western Kentucky. At the 4-mile mark, I was going to put the hammer down and just put a surge in just to see who was interested in staying around, and got a brutal stitch that just doubled me over for a mile. And then as quickly as it came, it went away. Total frustration, because that would have been a race I would have loved to see what the outcome would have been. But it was a very magical time in terms of, it started probably the summer before, of just being able to log 110, 120, 125 miles all over the summer. So when we hit September, October, it was, I could put the hammer down when I wanted to. It was just a lot, it sounds odd, but it was just really enjoyable because I knew what the outcomes were going to be. I knew where I could go from. So on Princeton's course, I think we broke the course record almost by a minute. We were just flying along, and it's one where I kept on kind of challenging myself in terms of how far out can you go from, and sustain it the whole time. So it was a fun time.
Can I make a comment,
Last
please?
long enough.
Yeah, please do. I mean, it's, yeah.
This comment is, more for the members of the present cross-country team, that are listening. Back when Dave ran 23:51, which was the all-time record at Van Cortlandt Park for 5 miles. That was at a time when both the District 1 and District 2 NCAA qualifying meets were held at Van Cortlandt Park. The NCAA gave the IC4As a special dispensation at that time to run their qualifying meets together. And they would take the NCAA qualifiers, out of that combined meet. And year in and year out, the top runners in the East, District 1 and District 2 met at Van Cortlandt Park. So that time is indicative of the outstanding performance, that Dave had, to beat all the Olympians that ever ran on that course, Frank Shorter, etc. Many of the Olympians that, ran for Villanova and other outstanding runners in the East, and Dave, smashed that record, running 23:51 was truly meaningful. And I just want the kids on the team to be aware and appreciative of what that thing is. Sometimes things get lost because they're not presented in context. And I just wanted to make sure that the kids on the team, are motivated, but also aware of the significance of that record.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks.
Well said. Well said. Ewan. Well said. And Villanova's home course is our home course, and so every great Villanova runner, he knocks that off. And I think Frank Shorter was pretty good in his day. As Peter pointed out, it's quite remarkable, that 2-month period. It was an honor to have been a part of that, to be honest. Anything else on that 71 season anybody wants to share? Or excuse me, 75. All right, good. Peter, thank you, man. We learned a lot of, Dave, we've learned about you're a farmer, your, pull-ups and all that. I think another guy who knows you, Tom Bloomberg, has another side of you that we're going to learn in today too. Tom, are you on?
I'm on. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Tom, good to see you.
Oops,
Likewise.
yeah.
Been a long time.
Bernie's on.
So Dave and I started at Penn together, and I see a couple other guys on the screen that we all started. My brothers, Stu Belts, Ed Koch, and Peter Christ were classmates of mine. So I stayed involved with track quite a while. I started freshman year, and then my other friend, Bernie Gansel, was the reason I got out of running track, running the sprints, because I knew I'd never be able to beat Bernie. And he probably doesn't know that, but great respect for Bernie. But I stayed involved with track quite a bit, but I got to know Dave not as a runner, but as a dorm mate. We were in Hill together and just hung out together a lot. Back in those days, I ran track, he ran track. I came from California. I didn't know anything about guys running in the Midwest, and he ran distances. And I was a sprinter. But, we still became friends, and that lasted all the years that we were at Penn together. And I would follow him and what he was doing and doing all that kind of stuff. But my real question is, what did you do when you weren't running? Because obviously you were running a lot. And when I knew this was coming up, I happened to run through an old photograph. I'd sort of like you to explain what this photograph is all about, what you did. Let's see if we can pull it up.
It was funny because
that's a photo you probably never have seen.
I've never seen that. And Tom, I want to let you know, had I known this girl, I would have never have left Penn.
Well, you did know her. You did know her.
I don't recall her name though. I recognize her face though. So
Ellen Doherty.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So I was in love with her, but she didn't know that. But I always thought she was real cute. And I think I was walking around Franklin one day and saw her come up to you, and we were all friends back then.
Yeah.
And just took that picture, and it was just, for some reason, I've kept it for 50 years. And to me, it's just a great picture. But
That's why I couldn't do this at home with my wife in the background. So.
Right. I wanted to be careful. I told Steve, be careful of that picture. It's not racy or anything else, but make sure that Dave gives permission if you were ever to use it for anything. But what did you do? You were obviously running a tremendous amount of time. What did you do for a social life? I mean, other than, have a beer with me from time to time.
To get away from it, two things. I assessed really quickly. Peter Christ was a studyaholic, and I said, if I'm ever going to make it through Penn, I would tag along with him and go over to the library. I wasn't as diligent as Peter. I go over every other,
back in now.
I go over every other day and spend like an hour, and people be there for 2 or 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And I must have read faster because I go for like 45 minutes to an hour and say, okay, that's enough. I'm going home.
Well,
What is that building? What is
With,
that picture?
my college roommates were Tom Bloomberg or Dave Blitzstein was my college roommate, and I picked him because it allowed me to get away from track. Dave was a distance runner in high school, but was just a good college roommate that I ran into, and he and I moved off campus, like I think junior and senior.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can vouch for Peter because I roomed with him for 2 semesters, junior and senior year, where we actually shared the same room. And I'd get up in the morning, and Peter was just coming back from his, I don't know, how far was it, Peter? 5-10 miles that you would run?
It was down to the bridge and back. So probably 6 miles.
5-6 miles. All I know is as a sprinter, that was way beyond anything I could do. And so you picked the right guy to help educate you, because if he wasn't running, he was at the library.
He was at the library. So
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, my man.
good to see
Dave,
you.
we're learning a lot about you. I never had any women brushing my hair.
Can I add a comment with Dave Blitzstein? And it ties in with Dave's competitiveness and his talent. I believe you built from scratch the bunk beds in your house up on whatever 44th Street or
12, Spruce Street.
Was that correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Hey, I worked on a farm.
Many men of many talents.
Right.
Dave, we got a couple other people that kind of also want. I mean, I think for everybody, a lot of time Dave was not there, and I know my teammate as well, Kenny Roberts, had a similar question. And Kenny,
Nope, got the wrong one.
welcome, my friend, and share your thoughts.
Hi,
with,
Dave.
Mr. Merrick.
Dave, I've seen you more in the last month on these 2 calls than I saw you in the fall of '74. Combined, we were kind of a ghost to us. So
Right.
We're kind of curious, what were you doing in the years where you weren't competing? Were you on campus? Were you back home training? Or like, what was your story for that '74 year?
It's funny. Kent and Steve had to refresh me when I was there and when I wasn't there. I just kind of phased out and said, I couldn't tell you. So what was I really there? I didn't run that year. I got healthy when I went home. So after my freshman year, I had a stress fracture. I actually broke down in indoor track and then had a stress fracture outdoors. So I didn't finish that. And I had an idea that I probably wasn't coming back at the end of my freshman year. And went to Alabama purely by happenstance with a friend of mine, Jen Johnson, who was a pole vaulter, was down there in the long area that was in the video. But I'd go home, get healthy, come back, and I'd run a season and then break down. And then when I was here, everything was on concrete. So I think it was my junior year. Dave Blitzstein was a high school distance runner, and excuse me, Dave, if you're on, wasn't that good. But when I started coming back after being broken down the 3rd or 4th time, we'd go down and I would run around the Hollenbeck grass fields just to get off concrete. And Dave was slow enough so I could kind of tag along at like 7:30 miles, and gradually started building back up. Then through Davey McKee, I found Kiefer. I found the bridle paths. And so the summer before my senior year was just a godsend. I went out and ran almost all my summer runs out there. So.
Oh, great. So you were in Philadelphia at the time. You were just training, light training and on grass.
As Jeff said, we went quite a while with just swimming and weight training. It takes you a while to get up to bench press over 200, you know, Kenny.
Yeah. I haven't been there yet, but I'm still working on it.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of us didn't know where you were, Dave, that, you know, some of our, I mean, it was MIA until almost a year later. It is pretty incredible.
There's one also where I couldn't be around it because it just drove you crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being around something that you can't do. I love watching you guys run, so I go to the meets and stuff, but you know, the training pieces were just really frustrating because you couldn't do it. So, and I know, you know, bicycling I could have gotten into bicycling and elliptical to stay in shape. It would have made a huge difference to it, but I swam in the pool and lifted weights. So
thanks, Dave. Kenny, good to see you, man. Thank you. I think Kenny Ashworth, I think you're kind of in a similar vein. A lot of questions on experiences and all, but Kenny, welcome, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks. It's great. Dave, it's great to see you. It's great
Kenny,
to see everybody. I have a very specific question. Do you have contact information for Dave Blitz?
Yeah. I haven't talked to him in a little bit now, but he's down in Washington. He's a big
So am I. So I wonder if I'll shoot you an email. I would love to, if you have that. I'd love to get in touch with Dave and Edie. I hope they're still together.
Oh, they are. Yeah, two kids, 2 dogs. He's a muckety muck with the United somebody or other. He's on their board.
United Mine Workers. I thought.
United. What you call it? The grocery guys.
Oh, okay. Because he's a union guy.
Yeah.
It was I guess my question was, and I was going to ask you one question I have, and you answered it already, was about your decision to live way off campus, or it seemed like in those days, and to live with non-track guys. You already dealt with that. So I asked, what was your favorite non-track memories of Penn? Like, what were the things that kind of stand out for you that didn't have anything to do with the cross-country course or the track?
Probably Dave Blitzstein, and that's me. I chose Dave as a roommate for a reason, because I was, you know, I got to go home and I got away from track. So it was just downtime. Enjoyed it. I enjoyed cooking. A lot of you guys came up for breakfast before races sometimes. So what a funny story was, we moved up to 4312 Spruce Street, and it wasn't exactly the nicest house. And so I'm looking at an article in the Daily Pennsylvania, and there's our house with condemned houses in the neighborhood. And it was us. It was our house. So, so I went down to our landlord and said, "Hey, we should get a rent break here." So.
Right.
And Kenny, you said you changed your thoughts about Craig Virgin as well. I don't know if you want to share what you kind of mentioned to me.
I just thought there was, when I first saw his clip on that thing, I thought he was a little passive aggressive, a little like a rubbing. I want to rub the nose in an old competitor, but I warmed up to him after a while.
You know, Craig is the ultimate competitor. It's interesting because he came up to me after, it was a sophomore year, after the state meets in cross country. And here's a guy comes up and just gloms onto you and says, "Boom, how do you do it?" But you can tell the intensity was there early on. So, and he's a pretty good friend. So,
speaking of intensity, I got one other. Do you ever hear from Lee Erickson? A familiar name to a lot of us from my year.
Round mound to rebound. He gained some weight. So I just saw him. My dad passed away in February, so I was just back.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I saw Lee and Don, as a matter of fact. So Lee's now retired, so he's gained a little weight. So
we all do.
No,
thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Julio, we want to bring you back in. This is an area that I try to talk a little bit about, Dave, with you, but Julio wants to know about injuries and all, and I think it's a great area. We just didn't get a chance to talk about that much. So Julio, the floor is yours.
Well, I had 2 questions, and I'll segue from your intro, Steve. In answering a lot of these questions, you reference, going into swimming and, lifting. And obviously now when athletes get injured, there are a variety of ways in which, athletes, can continue to stay in shape. Running in the pool, besides swimming, running in the pool where your, legs aren't touching the ground, weightlifting and other things like that. You can't go back in time and change that, but when your injury's such that if these new techniques and alternative training methods would have been available, it could have cut down on the intensity of the mileage that you were doing, where it could have been then the rest of your training could have been augmented by this auxiliary or extra or different, training methods. There was only one way that I think, coaching has certainly evolved a lot, as, Jim Rafferty referenced, 50 years ago.
Two things, Julio. The technology of the equipment has changed hugely. So that would have been a major impact in terms of the technology with running shoes now to absorb a lot of the impact would have made a huge difference. And then the training technology with ellipticals and I have access to a pool here, but I just don't like swimming. I sink. But you put a running vest on and you could have cross-trained a lot and kept your cardio up quite a bit without having to pound a lot of the miles in. I get up, I'm down at the Y about 5:30 and put 30 minutes in on an elliptical and do 6,000 strides and hop off. And you can keep yourself in pretty good shape. So it would have made a big difference. I was talking with Kent and Steve earlier. I'm going in for my 5th knee surgery on August 4th. I was hoping to have it ahead of time so I would have had some stitches to show off. So.
Well, the other question I had, Dave, was obviously, we were all successful in high school, and that's why Tuck recruited us. But sometimes there is a transition, as you talked with your coach, getting ready to come to Penn, and you were successful with a certain type of philosophy in training. And then, for myself, it was more of a distance-based, but also interval-based, distance running. And when I got to Penn, we did a lot less intervals with a lot less intensity. How did your high school training differ from the regiment that you trained under while you were being coached by Tuck?
Significantly, Julio. I was really lucky, and I had 3 high school coaches. My freshman year was one fellow, and then Coach Rodriguez took over. He was an ex-Marine, and he just beat the crap out of us. So we were better. We were in better shape. Coach Al was a technician. He was the one that really taught me training with a purpose, really with an intensity. Same thing here, where I did a lot more interval training in high school than I did in college. Where in college, I kind of ran by myself sometimes in the morning. I'd hammer it in the morning. I'd run some of my intervals sometimes in the morning. I'd go out. Luckily, the River Drive was kind of marked where I knew exactly where half miles or miles were. And I was doing 430 mile surges my senior year. I'd go out for 6 to 8 mile run, and I'd put 3 or 4 1 mile surges in at 335, 430, 435, just for tempo. And I disagree with him. I liked pain on the track with intervals. Training with a purpose makes a lot of sense. So it was interesting. It was kind of a clash of philosophies where I got my base from Tuck, but mentally I go off and kind of do some of my own things with intensity sometimes.
And I coached, after I graduated, from Penn, and tempo training, threshold running wasn't a thing that I was ever introduced to,
right?
While I was actively competing.
Wow,
so a little ahead of your time doing it on your own.
Yeah, Davey McKee has referenced it a couple of times where my senior year, we go off for some nice tempo runs and we put the hammer down a couple of times. Kiefer came back and said, I think we ran faster in practice than I've ever run in a road race before. So
it's true. At least I did.
Thank you, Mr. Piazza. Appreciate it, buddy. We don't usually let this guy come out. The Zoom czar usually is not allowed to go public, Dave, but he does have a question for you that kind of builds on something you just said. So
where's my
Your special award is coming in the mail. Don't worry. Hey, you know, this thing with training with a purpose, Dave, it's come up a number of times. And I got to tell you, when we did the original interview, where there were just 5 of us, you mentioned this, and you also referenced Coach Al and he being a technician. My high school coach was also a technician, and he gave us this idea of training with a purpose. And I think it did make a difference. The thing that I feel bad about is we didn't have a chance to benefit from your idea and your expertise on this. I think it would have made a big difference for the team as a whole. But here's the question. So present day, most people don't know this. We discovered it. You're pretty darn good at golf. And I'd like you to share with the group here some of your recent successes, but also talk about training with a purpose in the world of golf.
It's kind of the same thing, Kent, with regard to just staying focused on something. I was lucky when I was working at Lawrenceville. They had a 9-hole golf course. And so I got to, a friend of mine who worked with me, we'd go out, we'd shoot 3 or 4 holes and got better and better. I got down to about a 14 handicap and said, if you practice this, you can get better at it. I walked away from it for 15, 20 years. So I'm sitting there watching TV, and I watch, gotta be careful how I articulate some of the physical features of some of these rounder golfers. I'm going, these guys are not great athletes. And it's one where if you do something with a purpose all the time. So about 2 years ago, I just started practicing every day. So I'd spend a half hour to 45 minutes on particular short irons, long irons, driving, putting. Putting is usually a 45-minute to an hour day. So I've gone from, 15, 16 handicap, or earlier in the year, I was down to a 4. Shot some really good rounds, shot par, but it was on the senior tees. So it doesn't count. But I haven't played in a month because of knee surgery. So it might be a short-lived career.
Well, so I guess the big question is, I mean, you were trying to play or trying to qualify for the senior PGA, which
you can go down to Florida and you can go through their senior PGA courses. Then you have to qualify, and then you can sign up for a senior PGA event. You have to qualify. So on Monday, Tuesday you play, and then or Wednesday, and then they start playing on Thursday. So
it would have been great, honestly, to see you there. It would have been very exciting. But I think it speaks to what everybody said. You enjoy competition. You enjoy training. This training with a purpose and focusing on things. The technique, being the technician that you are. I'm just really, really impressed. And I wanted to share this with the folks here because I'm sure many don't know that you've taken your talents and moved on to a sport that most of us just watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
It's fun.
Here. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
They call it golf because some other explicitives were taken already. So whoops.
We got one more guy in the blocks from the formal alumni questions. I just asked folks, we're going to ask the alumni, anybody now, to ask questions afterwards, but I'd like to specifically for some of the guys that are on the current track team or Coach Dolan, we'll ask you guys first if you have a thought, reaction, or question after our last speaker here. So with that as an ado, Mr. Wilson.
Hey, Dave, it's good to see you.
Question for Dave.
Dave, I've got a question for you. A lot of great competitors normally have a foil or someone that drove them to higher heights. Given how competitive you were, was there another athlete that you ran against that you particularly relished destroying?
Not show that picture. He's within eyesight right there. A little later in the race, I think he was around the turn doing a warm down, and I was still finishing. So in high school, I had a couple, and then in college, mainly some of the Villanova guys. I just took great pride in hammering some of these guys. Woulda, coulda, shoulda gone there. Didn't, but in track, it was Craig Masbeck. He wouldn't come up, and I wasn't going to go down for a mile to run against him. In college, my own teammate Elton was probably my biggest competitor, just because of how good he was, and he was a tough runner. Again, I didn't want to go down to the mile, and I wanted him to come up to the 3 mile, where I thought was a little more neutral at 3 miles. But and 6 mile would have been a lot of fun. But so the middle ground would have been interesting there.
Got it. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
David, thanks.
Ron,
Hey,
thanks for all you
how
do
good
with
was
athletes,
Eamon?
so.
That picture for some of the folks, that was Eamon Coghlan, but how good, Dave, was Eamon?
Pardon?
How good, how good for folks that, some of the younger folks probably don't know who that picture was. It was Eamon Coghlan, but just how good was he?
My senior year, he ran 356, 355. And that's where Tup, I said, Tup, can't we change the lineup? Let Murph run against him. Let Dollar run against him. I'll even run the quarter mile against somebody. Let somebody else run against him. He, indoors, it was a lot closer. I had broken down. It wasn't quite as competitive outdoor. Indoors, we ran right around 4 minutes, and he could run 357, 358, 350. He'd tag along with me, and then he just had a different gear at the end. Although if Tommy's still on, we could go back and talk about the 1976 indoor NCAs, where Tommy had a great anchor, or 3/4 leg. Was that, Tom?
Well, I ran 1 lap short of that 1,200 yard, yes. Whatever my leg was.
He gave me a good 2/3 of a lap behind. So I turned around, and Rono was running from Washington State. And said, holy shit, we're going to get lapped.
I just wanted to see how good you really were.
Maybe the root cause, Tommy, was some of that stuff in the background there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, you never know.
Never know.
All right. Hey, thanks, Ron. Hey, before we open up the mic to the everybody here, I don't know if Coach Dolan or maybe some of the current crop, we didn't prep any of this, but if you guys have a thought or question for Dave coming from your side, I'm sure it'd be welcome by all of us if you have a question or two for Dave.
Well, special kudos to Coach Dolan, current teammate, guys. You've got a great coach in him. Take advantage of it. He does a great job.
Thanks a lot. I'd love to make a comment. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, this is really neat, to have the younger guys and the current team involved. So thanks for inviting us, and this sort of Legends of series. So we're obviously here hearing from Dave, a true legend. But as I look around the boxes of the screen here, this is the legends of Penn Track and Field. It's really cool, and I really thought it was important for the young guys to get a chance to see the faces and hear the names, and as they sort of chase their potential. It's fun to see this group, and we say it all the time, to the guys, and actually just to share it. There probably are almost 20 guys in this call. There's some multiple screen situations where the guys are together right now, but we always say you're part of something much bigger than you, and you're part of something very, very big here. And I think the pride of wearing the red and blue stripes and representing Penn is alive and strong. And we're very well aware of the great teams of the 70s and the history that we're a part of. So it's really cool for us to be here. That's sort of a general comment, for Dave, for you, and this group. And I guess my question would be, if you could maybe by way of motivation, we have kind of a slogan around here, and we always say, let's have fun really going for it and chasing our potential. And I know you're talking about the mileage you ran and how motivated you were, and training with a purpose to chase your goals. And I would be interested to hear how maybe some of that motivation and strive has influenced your life after running and after track and field, because I think we always talk about and so many alums give back in so many ways with the mentoring program and come and cheer for the team and so forth. And they always say how being on the Penn Track and Field team and competing was like a life-changing experience for them. So Dave, if you could just kind of share maybe some of the challenges and successes, and how maybe this experience as a runner at Penn maybe even influenced your life since then, if you don't mind, for the guys. But thanks for including us.
I appreciate it, Coach, and I appreciate you getting Penn back into the foray of kind of running prowess. So kudos. I think you hit on something, Coach, with regard to the preparation for athletics, whatever it is, track and what have you. I think is the same as in life. It's preparing yourself for success. After college, it came to a fork in the road, and as I said earlier, I could have seen myself doing something like Tommy Donlan, coaching and stuff, doing what I would have loved to have done what you did, but I had to kind of step away from it just to get away from it for a while. But I think track's lessons, I think, were really shaping for the challenges, frustrations, and accomplishments for later in life. I think they both mirror each other really well in terms of preparing yourself for any competition. I think does the same thing in life as well. If you look at the picture board up there, there's a lot of successful people on the pictorial board up there. So
Thank you, Dave.
Coach, Dave McKee,
Thanks,
if I
Coach.
could add to that, particularly in cross country for the current guys, because it's a team sport and there's trust that is involved. Everybody, and I think you've learned that in the last COVID year without being with each other. Everybody was out training on their own, and they had incredible times this spring. But Dave was, his resilience taught all of us that we have to bounce back from things. And that lesson, I think, stays with you. The losses and overcoming them probably stay with you for your life in business and just life in general. So I think that's the thing that I would take from working as a team, overcoming losses, and going forward. So.
And Coach, thanks for putting Russo in the 5,000 and not letting him running more 10,000. So stay there. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Contributions in the mail. It's coming.
Thank you,
He
Coach.
had a great year. No, it was a fun year. He had a great year. Thanks. We're the 10K lives on. That was a great record. That's a great record.
Was. All right, we got time for some other folks to ask questions. So please chime in. It's kind of first folks out of the blocks. Don't be shy.
Steve, this is Elton.
Al, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Dave.
Yeah.
Dave, I just want to say that I took the plunge and attempted to move up to the 6 mile in 74. But without you there to spear me on, I found myself dropping out somewhere after the 3 mile. I just couldn't deal with a pace that slow.
Well, that was, it's a kind of a shocking thing out. I watched the Olympic 10,000 this morning, and you run it, you start your first lap, and they hold a sign up, 25 to go. You go. Oh.
I do want to say, Dave, that I am very proud to have been your teammate. You certainly motivated the hell out of me, and I remember some of those great cross-country races. But one thing that I am very, very appreciative to you for is that it allowed me to be the lazy cross-country runner that I was. With you there, I knew that I could hang back, and I only had to run when we were in danger of losing, which was not very often.
No.
So thank you for your great expertise and competitiveness. It made life easier for me and for all of your teammates. So we really appreciate you.
No, that 71 team was special out. It was one of those things where champions training with champions breeds champions. And that was a super, super team.
Hey, El, could I ask you a question? El, you graduated before I got there, but you showed up every now and then for a workout. And when we knew you and Dave were going to be doing a workout, I remember one on the track. It was all day being nervous. It was like a big race. And I remember 10 half-mile workout we had to do, and each of them were about 15 seconds below what Tuck wanted. And the last one, you two guys, I think ran a 156. The rest of us would go to. That pretty much ended the rest of our cross-country season. If you guys could, what was it like when you two guys got in workouts together? Was that an exceptional thing, or was that the way it was back in the day?
Well, for me, being part of a team was very, very important to me. And wanting to help teammates is what we did. So I didn't feel that we were super, super competitive when we were in workouts, but we certainly challenged each other, and we strived to make it better for all, so that we could all improve. I have to step away for a moment, but I am coming back. Sorry about that.
Steve?
Anybody else?
Mark, Danielle? Steve?
Mark, I do.
All right. So I don't know whether you were there. So I have two stories, and they're related. My first day of track or cross country practice is when David Merrick came back. And the last half mile, I think it was 10 halves at 2:10. Yep. And there was this shorter guy from New York that was barrel chested. We know it's Rafferty. He kind of pushed the pace. And at the end, Elton and Dave were like 150 something, and Tup, remember, he had the baton and he's running across the field screaming, what are you doing? And he was yelling at Elton. He didn't yell at Dave. So fast forward, my junior year, I was fortunate to train with you, Dave. And you had me doing, in high school, I was a better cross country runner than a track runner. And I started, I don't think I could run a 2:10.5. And a week before the Penn relays, Tup said, you're going to run at night, because I was slow. I wasn't on the relay teams, and you're going to run in the 10,000 meters. So Dave, you don't probably remember this, but you had me do 10, you said to Tup, let's do 10 halves at 2:05. And it felt pretty good. And I said, Dave, that's pretty good. He goes, just do that. So in the race, it was, what's his name? Kurt Alitz, the big guy, and Trujillo. So like with 2 miles to go, Dave, you're near the steeplechase and you're yelling at me, you can do this. I'm like, what are you kidding? I can't get these guys. Well, long and short, because of your training, Dave, and pushing me, I finished third and qualified for the NCAAs that year. And I got third to Alitz, and they at the steeplechase, they just kind of blew me away. But I had run 29:50 and qualified. And Dave, I never really thanked you. And so I thank you for that, like 4 weeks of intense training before the Penn relays. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Anything else?
Dave, do you remember playing golf with Gibby up at Kutcher's?
Yeah.
I remember stealing the cart.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And there was a rumor that we were never invited back because somebody who will remain nameless, we left a golf cart in a sand trap late at night.
No, I know nothing about that. Sergeant Schultz here. I know nothing.
I know nothing.
And I David, Mark Daniel, and everybody's asking where you were in 74?
Yeah.
You were with Toby, and we used to make breakfast and cook all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Huntley was there. We would go to your house for dinner, for breakfast. That was your flame at that point in time.
I remember that. Yeah.
You know, I do remember, Dave, the story. Elk brought this up, but Tup yelled at Elk. But you were the only guy, and this is probably more for the younger folks. Nobody on the team was ever called by their name. Our coach didn't know our names. But you were always Dave or David, and we did want to make sure we reminded you of that as we think back on the memories here today. The rest of us were Rock Top, Jasper, and you were David, as I recall.
So Steve, if I could, I don't know if you remember this, but first day of cross country practice, we go out to Belmont Plateau in the bus or the van or whatever it was, and Tup is going to match each of the freshmen up with the upperclassmen. And to your point, he didn't know anybody's name, and I think the first guy he was calling was you to match you up with Kiefer or somebody. And after Jasper Schultes got over there. Right. So then the next guy goes around and he's pulling to point to somebody, and he, Jasper, I think, Jasper, I've never known anybody named Jasper. The first two guys on our team are named Jasper. This is unbelievable. And of course, the rule of that is if they're yelling Jasper and no one's answering, you're Jasper.
You're Jasper. Oh, that's me. Yeah.
I'm trying to make you feel guilty about this, Dave. That's the point, I think, of all this. Anything else out there, guys? How about from some of the current athletes? Do you guys, any of you guys have a thought, reaction, question? This guy's a heck of a trainer. Kent and I listened to a lot of his training and thought, I wish we had done some of this stuff a little better in the day. I don't know if anybody have any thoughts or questions today from the current group of athletes. All right.
I have no voices.
So some of the guys, just to share, some of the guys, I told them we were on here from 3 to 4, and some of them I just told them, sent them a note saying if they need to step away.
Oh, no problem.
Some of the guys just stepped away in the last 2-3 minutes. So
no problem.
We're a little light on younger guys all of a sudden.
So Coach, feel free to tell them to ease off that 1,500 time, because every time they beat it, Huntley sends me a note saying we're getting ready to get bumped off the list. So feel free to go easy there.
Yeah, I'll share. We do have a good group. It's been fun the last few years, and I think someone made a great comment. I was really proud of them last year. It was such a hard year for everybody, and they were super motivated. We didn't compete in cross country. We didn't compete in indoor, and they really worked hard on their own, frankly, most of the year. I didn't see them for practice till February 1st in person. It was all Zoom calls every week or two. So they did a great job, and they're really excited for this year to race again in cross country. Guys are gearing up for the fall, and we have a nice team coming back, and actually a lot of young guys. So it'll be fun. And obviously, if any of the young guys have any questions, feel free. But it's cool to be a part of this, and I think you'll see some pretty cool times this year. The guys we returned quite a few of those milers and stuff. It should be an exciting year.
Great.
But thanks.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you,
Coach.
Coach Dolan.
One thing this call proves is that those kids are making memories that will last a lifetime.
Yep.
So it's an exciting time in their life, and tell them to make the most of it and really have a lot of fun.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, thanks, Will do. And I know we got I know it's not this group, but a couple years ago, I got to see Dave over at Belmont Plateau as well, which was cool for our group. Honored for all of his memorable races there and his Hall of Fame award at Belmont Plateau. So we've definitely a lot of the guys know certainly Dave's background and frankly a lot of your backgrounds. They'll look at all those record books and see a lot of these names. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, great to see this group together. Really neat.
Hey, we get better with age.
We
Really?
get faster.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Hey, Dave, it's Rafferty here. I'm so glad that you moved on to golf and not pickleball.
Although that's a big sport here.
Everywhere in the country
evil,
now.
Raph. That's evil.
Hey,
Kat?
Coach Dolan, I have a question for you. You can kind of understand that what we did back then was run a lot of mileage, and everybody ran the same workout, and somebody finished the practice first and somebody finished the practice last, and that's how it kind of went all the time. But could you tell us how your coaching technique is these years, and do you have people running on the team over 100 miles a week, and do you have it tapered for different? There was nothing like these guys run this way and this group runs that way. It was all, everybody ran the same way. Could you address that a little bit for us?
I mean, yeah, I don't want to steal too much from the call here. That's about this group and Dave, but I mean, I can make a comment or two, Dave. It makes me think, and actually, to be honest, I just sent the guys a note saying that, have a great week, guys. And I sort of made the joke, no 120-mile weeks. So we don't have anybody run as much as you ran. I just kind of made that joke on our little group chat on the side.
No
here,
pain, no gain, Coach.
Yeah, that's true. We got to get after. So I think Julio brought up a very good point. We do have a range of mileage totals and differences on our team. And I think when we have a lot of freshmen that are on the call here today, and I always tell them that it's my job to work with them to take the next logical step. So, if we have a freshman that's come in that's run quite a bit, like we're not going to back them off. We're going to, continue to let them, if they've proven healthy and they can handle the volume and stuff, and the volume is good, right? But then we also have a lot of people come into the program that really have low volume, and they're young, they're 18, they're coming to the program, their volume is really low in high school. So I feel that we risk injury or frankly, they underperform if we take too big a jump right away. So it's kind of a progression through their career, and it has to be somewhat individualized. So our team has a fairly large range of mileage they run. So to answer your question, yeah, we've had some people run 100 miles and more. Anthony Russo. I mean, you just named him before, but Anthony ran over 100 miles, last year because he could. And Ryan Rankin, who ran really fast last spring as a senior, is running in the 90s. So we do have some guys that run quite a bit. But then we also have a lot of guys that run, we have guys break a 4-minute mile running in the 70s. So it's a range depending on what's right for the person, with the goal of staying healthy and then maximizing their potential at that moment. And I think Julio brought up a great point, like the addition of more structured anaerobic threshold pace running, whether it's cruise intervals or tempo running, that's become a really big thing, as you know. And it sounds like Dave and some of you guys did it kind of maybe non-structured, but you were doing it anyways. But we do it more structured, right? So we set up X amount of time at specific paces or heart rates, and that's kind of a real backbone of the training philosophy. And that's very true. We're not the only ones doing that, of course. So I think maybe we get away with a little less total volume because we're a little more scientific about the types of workouts and the mix of workouts and the heart rate and things like that. But yeah, I mean, Dave, you said it. You got to change with the purpose, and hard work pays off. There's no doubt about. There's no anybody who's run fast a few years. It wasn't lucky. They trained hard.
Exactly.
So that's some general concepts, but
So you actually asked incoming freshmen what their training log was in high school? Because I don't think that question was ever asked about any of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that you had on this call today are really coming in as middle distance guys run the 800, and really to them, cross country has never been their primary season. So to flip them at a real high mileage program out of the gun would be tough. So yeah, we try to, I use the slogan, take the next logical step, because they do need to work harder and more every year, but it has to be one step, not 4 steps. So they all break down. So, but I mean, you guys are great teams. And I think, the fact that you had that cluster, that many good runners pushing each other, it was great. I mean, truthfully, those were certainly the best teams ever. The guys have won 2 of the last 4 HEPs, which we're really proud of. But we know the times those groups ran at Van Cortlandt, the times you guys ran nationally, incredible running. So certainly aspiring to be that good. Amazing.
Hey, Steve, this is Ken. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I got a favor to ask. I have something that I have teed up and I want to share it with everybody. It's something that Dave Walters shared with us a long time ago. I don't know if everybody saw this video. So folks, bear with me here for just a second. Can you see him?
Yes.
All right.
How in the world could someone as skinny, I mean, his calves were like this round. How could someone that skinny become a state champ? And I was just shocked at that. But he did carry himself with that regal elegance as he was walking through, not arrogance, but just, you could tell there was something special about him, that set him apart from everybody else.
Those guys were scary, Dave.
All hail the king.
Dave, I mentioned this, I think, on the video, but also to Dave. Coach L said, I was a great coach because of Mr. Merrick. Dave Walters, the first thing he said to me was, I've been waiting for your call for 45 years. And Craig Virgin said, there's nobody else I would have done this for except for David. So Dave, the respect those guys had for you and how you helped them in their lives, both today and tomorrow, is another legacy that I thought was really great. They obviously had tremendous respect for you in your high school years. And we had to talk a lot about that, because I think to understand Dave Merrick, you had to understand the background of those years, but they have unbelievable respect, as do a lot of us, of course, but those guys were really, really great guys to hear from.
Well, it was a lot of fun and a lot of good company. So thanks for sharing.
Well, guys, we're at the end of our time here. I know I speak for all the alumni here, David. Thank you for, as Kenny Roberts said, we didn't know you for like the last 50 years. And the last month we've seen you more than we have seen you since then. But thank you for your time, and the alumni, thank you. There's like 70 folks that were on this call. We appreciate everybody taking the time out today. And hopefully, Dave, you're the first of many of the legends that we're able to talk to, my buddy.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, man.
Thank
you, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Steve.
Adios. Thanks,
Dave.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for
everybody.
doing this. Bye now.
Bye all.